Turn your eyes upon Jesus. 326.
See
Grab your handbook. You gonna sing as well, Olga? Yeah. Good, very good.
And 'tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, thus to take him at his word.
When we walk with the Lord in the light of his word, what a glory he sheds on our way. While we do his good will, he abides with us still, and with all who will trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey. Not a shadow can rise, not a cloud in the skies, but a smile quickly drives it away. Not a doubt or a fear, not a sigh or a tear, can depart while we trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey. Then in fellowship sweet, we will sit at his feet, or will walk by his side in the way. Where what he says we will do, where he sends we will go. Never fear, only trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey. Oh, trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey.
And 'tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, thus to take him at his word, thus to rest upon his promise, thus to know is safe the Lord.
Oh, for grace to trust him more.
That's a great trick to get two applauses, isn't it? Oh, very good. Great song as well, by the way. An encore, yeah. Very good, very good. Well done, boys. Really appreciate that. Good song, good singing. Oliver, you want to hand out our prayer cards tonight? Your name's on there, not yours first name, but your last name is on there. So yes, tonight is the Rogers' last night with us before they move up, packing the truck up in the morning. and heading down south. So be in prayer for them. Clayton's got a little bit further to go to the airport. I don't think Irene is going to pick you up. He would pressure the friendship, I think, yeah. She's already like 3/4 of the way into retirement. I think that would just push her straight there like now. Yeah, so, yeah, no, I don't think so. But, yeah, so they're heading down tomorrow, so be in prayer for them, and sure we'll miss them. I've enjoyed them coming through here. Wish they could have stayed. I think that we speak for everyone when I say that. Genuinely mean that. And we're praying for them and see what God does here and there. So, Connor's on the mic. The other one is Christian that's on our card as well. Like I said, I had words with him, had a chat with him on Sunday. Just pray that God would open his heart and, or just enlighten the eyes of his understanding. That's what I'm asking for prayer, that he would understand who God is and his need of Jesus and the importance of who Jesus is, and that no flesh shall be justified in his sight. It cannot happen. You need Jesus. So just pray that God enlightens his understanding around salvation. Prayer request, Kahul.
There was a man called Ken that I met in the city on Monday night, and really interesting conversation with him afterwards. I sort of started off by asking him, "Oh, look, are you a Christian or whatever?" And he says, "Yeah, no, I was raised as a Christian," and kind of was like, "Yeah, well, you know, then everybody's a Christian. Half of Australia are Christians, if
Half the world."
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, of course, just brought it back to, you know, that really, like, the most important thing is that you're born again. And he actually had a really sort of strong testimony of salvation, in that he was like, you know, I remember when I was a teenager, he said, I actually genuinely was so sorrowful for my sin and for all the things I had done wrong. And he goes, and I believed on Jesus and I trusted him and I took him as my savior. And he says, because he kept saying he was baptized, but then I was like, no, well, your baptism doesn't mean salvation. He goes, no, but I was baptized after I believed. And I was like, okay, yeah. I said, like, that sounds good. And I was just explaining to him what that means, like, you know, when somebody puts their faith in, you know, they're born again. Anyway, the conversation went from that to, do you know what, he was saying, do you know what, I actually feel like God's abandoned me. And I was like, oh, well, what do you mean? And he goes, I feel like I actually haven't heard from God and I don't feel his presence, and, you know, I don't know what's going on. He says he's not answering any of my prayers that I pray. And he says, it says in the Bible that you pray anything in my name and I'll answer it. I was like, okay. And I was like, just tell me what you're talking about. And he didn't want to tell me specifically what he was talking about, what he was praying about. But I just asked him, I said, like, you know, you're saying that God isn't speaking to you. Have you read the Bible? And he was like, yeah, I've read the Bible. I was like, yeah, but recently. And he was like, no. I said to him, like, look, God speaks to you through his word and so on and so forth. And he was then saying that loads of charismatic people were praying for him and saying that God was going to do this big thing to make him feel God's presence. And I said, listen, man, I said, forget about feeling God's presence. I said, if you want to hear from God, you can guarantee that you will hear from God when you read the Bible, because it is God's word. That's how he chooses to speak to us, you know. So anyway, long story short, he said, you know what, I'm gonna try and hear from God. Basically, I said, take a John and Romans, read through the book of John, and ask God to reveal himself to you. And I said, if you're genuine, God will speak to you. He will actually speak to you as you read his word. So yeah, pray for Ken. It was a bit of a sort of a funny conversation. I don't know whether he's actually, he had a strong testimony of salvation, like of believing, but he's just saying that he just doesn't, you know, he said he's doubting his faith and he's doubting everything and he feels like God isn't there.
Yeah.
So I've just been praying for him this week that God would reveal himself to him. So
Yep.
Ken.
Very good. Charismatics have a massive hold on our country and the Christian community. They really do. Crazy Maddox. Any other prayer requests over here? First. Fee.
Oh, I'm going to have my injection tomorrow on my wrist. So can you please, everybody pray that this injection will work, that, that I don't need surgery, please.
Yeah.
Because I had this for a couple of months now and it's really start to get frustrated. Please.
Yeah. All right. So that's tomorrow. Pray for Fee with that. That wrist is causing grief. Julie.
Oh, work for everybody who needs it,
Yes.
and health and safety for all of the older people in the church.
Yeah. Oliver.
Us with our move tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Got your room packed up? Bit late now. If it's not packed, it ain't going. Not going on the truck if it's not in the box. For sure, buddy. Make sure you get the bike on there. Don't leave the bike. Ben.
Pray for my friend Chris.
Yeah.
Another word of praise. The Holy Spirit's really convicted him about his drug use, and he messaged me saying, he's quitting it, and what he said something along the lines of, he can't praise God properly if he's doing drugs. So he's really opened his eyes to it. And I'm applying for a couple of new jobs. Just pray for those, please.
Sure. Julie.
Just for like Brendan and Clayton and all of those guys who work on the mines, they're actually in lockdown again up there. So they just need some prayer for some sanity and some wisdom and some patience.
You're in
Up there.
lockdown.
Yeah.
Lockdown again.
There was a couple of cases found on the mine sites.
There's a couple down here, but something
So
else.
no, the mines have to stay open. So they're all in lockdown.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can it work?
Yeah, they're working, but they're the 2 metre square rule and masks and swiping in and out of places, and it's really hard.
Yeah. Clayton.
Just for our friends in Queensland, Wendy.
Oh yeah.
Wendy.
Rhonda, what's her name?
Wendy.
Wendy. That's right.
Cass. Yeah, it's the cancer in it has been diagnosed as cancer in her lymph gland, and it's got to be removed now. And then she's also got more back in her eye socket, which she had taken out a few years back now, but it's come back. She just needs a lot of prayer for her and her family.
She's got kids, you see.
Yeah.
You're saying.
Yep.
6 kids. So, what's their ages? Or just, they're not allowed out of the house. They're home.
16. Yeah.
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 So, yep. Yeah. Pray for Wendy there. Pray for Wendy. There. Pray for our Wendy as well. While we mentioned Wendy's. Good to see her on Sunday, wasn't it? Yeah. Limping along, and she got there though. But pray for both Wendy's. Wendy over there in Queensland, and Wendy Ellis as well. Both with their health. Any other prayer requests this evening? Connor?
Dad.
Yeah.
I'd like to see them soon.
Yep. Yep. And I think Randall's parents are trying to come over as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you appreciate prayer for them. I think they're coming for a couple of months when they come over. So doing similar to you. So it'll be the battle of the Irish. The Republic versus the Northerners.
More of like a blessing that I didn't think I heard. Cottle and Naomi are moving into their new house. So it's just a blessing, and yeah, just sort of mention that.
Yeah, they got the keys yesterday, the day before. Yesterday, so yeah. So Connor's giving him time off. So yeah, that's right. So yeah, pray for them. They're getting settled in. Everyone that I say to that property, they all mention that old man. So everyone like, oh, the old man. That's where the old man was. Apparently, like I said it to the Thomases. I said it to Graham. I said they're moving basically the same distance from where they are now from your church, just the other side. And I said the one, it's like, oh, the old man. We used to stop and say hi. So I missed it. Apparently, I missed something here. I never saw the old man. So I don't think he died. I think he went into a home or something, is what I heard. So yeah. So all right. Any last prayer requests, Jude? Yeah, pray for our Sunday services for sure. Pray for Connor for our Sunday services. Connor is preaching here Sunday morning. I'm over in Armadale and preaching at Armadale Sunday morning. I'll be back Sunday evening. I'm doing Sunday school and the main service over there. We're going to be rotating through a little bit over the next 6 months, 7 months, and helping out Armadale. Now they're committed to the work in Geraldton, so pray for them in Geraldton. And they're driving up every single week, and Pastor Mel is going up on a Sunday, and a family's going up with him, and so they're rotating through to go to Geraldton. They've rented a house up there, so they don't have to do an Airbnb or hotel. So they've got a place that they are at. They've got a place, the rental. They had the families that were there the first week came back this week, he said, and they brought some visitors, and everyone that was there the first week came back, and they brought more. Which is, you can't ask for too much more, I guess. So it's always nice to have people from the very beginning. So pray for them, pray for the work there in Geraldton. So they're looking to get the gospel out. And he'll be heading up. Pray for their safety as well. I mean, back and forth to Geraldton every weekend. So up Friday, usually Friday morning, and then come back Sunday afternoon or Monday morning, depending on time. So they're looking to minister up there in Geraldton, see if God can... what God can do over the next 6 months up there. All right, take your Bibles, turn to Daniel chapter number 3. Daniel chapter number 3. Interesting chapters, these ones in the book of Daniel. And I feel that, Wednesday nights, at least this first part of Daniel is so much more than what we could say about it than what we're giving it, but we're trying to skim over the top of it, trying to give you an overview of the books and the chapters here from Daniel. We'll go all the way through to the end of the Old Testament over the coming weeks and months and obviously years as well. But Daniel chapter number 3 says this in verse number 1, that Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent together the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Then the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all rulers of the provinces were gathered together unto the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up, and they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then an herald cried aloud, To you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all manner of music, ye fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king hath set up. And whoso falleth not down and worshippeth shall the same hour be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Therefore at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kind of music, all the people, the nations, and the languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Wherefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They spake and said unto Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso falleth not down and worshippeth, that he shall be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the provinces of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now if ye be ready at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kind of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made, well. But if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the image which thou hast set up. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake, and commanded that they should heat the furnace 17 times more than it was wont to be heated. And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, and their hats, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because of the king's commandment was urgent, and the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, and rose up in haste, and spake, and said unto the counselors, Did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and spake, and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth, and come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth of the midst of the fire. And the princes, governors, captains, and kings' counselors, being gathered together, saw these men, upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was an hair of their head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and has changed the king's word and yielded their bodies that they might not worship any god except their own God. Wherefore I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which spake anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no God that can deliver after this sort. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. What a story. What a story. Thoughts, comments, feedback before I go into my notes this evening. Out of this, any previous comments or thoughts down the front here?
Just an observation. No mention of Daniel.
No, Daniel's not there. Daniel has his own furnace later on, doesn't he?
He would have been called because it said at the beginning that the king called all these Daniel's ahead. He would have been called.
Yeah, it would seem that way. For whatever reason he's not. Is he away on business? Because this is at the dedication of the image. So if he's away, I know later on in Daniel he has a vision by when he's in Shushan, which is in Iran. So he goes away on business at times. So maybe he's away at this particular time when the dedication of the image they're called. I'm not sure, but yeah, he's not included here. But he obviously has his trial later on, doesn't he? It would seem that way. Yeah, there's definitely a minority here that seems that way.
Which is like what you'll see in Christianity in the end times, where people will, give it away.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not Jews outwardly, but of the heart. It says about that. But yeah, they say they're Jews that don't serve the true God.
Maddie was learning about this particular chapter in one of her books this week, one of her paces, and it referred to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's children. Do you know about what age they were?
Nope, doesn't. I don't know.
It referred to them as children and not men.
It potentially can still be young men.
Okay.
At this stage. I mean, they were children when they were taken. How quickly this was done, I don't know. At the very beginning, you see that the image is an image of gold, which I would say links it to the previous chapter where thou art that head of gold, and it goes to his head, and he makes an image where they worship. So, and that happened in the second year of him establishing 4 years in Babylon. So, you know, they're in their early 20s maybe, if it's soon after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
but yeah. They were children in whom was no blemish in chapter number 1, but this is probably at least 5 years later than that. You have to raise your hand, Cal. You can't just call out. It's not. What do you think this is? You get demerits at school for that sort of stuff. So you got to get it above. You got to get it above the people in front of you. Oh, same word. Yeah, I missed it. What's the? What's your comment, buddy? Yeah. Yes, we'll get to that. That's in my notes. So yeah, there's definitely an overlay there, I believe. Other thoughts, comments, quickly? Jude and then Connor, and then we'll go with mine. Or Jeff. Jeff's there. Go, Jeff.
I just really like how even when they were in the fire, they came out and the smell of the fire wasn't even on them. Like, there was no chance it was just an accident. Like, it was nothing touched them whatsoever. It was definitely, it had to be a miracle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
It is. The detail there. Jude.
Number 6, King Nebuchadnezzar have already spoken. He declared the decree, and whoso fall it not down and worship it shall be the same hour to cast into the midst of burning fire. In this account, I think the whole kingdom is already in fear. Even they are not believers. It's the same fear. They just worship not because they like to worship the image that Nebuchadnezzar is. It's about fear. And then when it comes to Shadrach, Abednego, and in 16, I think they could feel also the fear, but they are already prepared to die. Because what happened here, they said that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, this is very brave, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee this matter. So they just tell Nebuchadnezzar. So they are willing to die, but God delivered them. And at the end of the chapter, they get promoted.
In just on that, while you're passing through that territory, to think what they did is I can't find it in my notes here somewhere. Yeah, it must be noted that the king who possessed unlimited earthly authority was being challenged. Like that's like he is like nobody. Like he was no authority of earthly authority to Nebuchadnezzar, and yet you stand up to them, you're going to face his fury. He challenged his authority. So yeah. You follow up thought on that? Yeah. Good.
The thing is, I hoping to see this one. In many years, keep coming back to this Bible. It looks like when we read the Bible, it looks like mechanical pattern. We read it because we want to read it.
Yeah.
And then we realized last night when we count the people in the furnace, like Brother Rose said, that how come Ella? Where's Daniel? Should be 6 because the other one is God or the Son of God. So 5, yeah. And then I never noticed for many years that Daniel was not there. I was thinking,
Yeah.
yeah. So reading the Bible is, I think we need to go deeper and deeper. Because what happened, I admit myself, I read very fast, very
Yeah.
fast, because I want to get into the story. But the minor details, I always miss
Yeah.
the minor details.
Yep. The Bible is definitely rereadable. I don't
Yeah.
like watching movies a second time. I rarely read a book a second time, but man, I love reading the Bible again and again. It's just like there's stuff there every time, for sure. Connor, real quick.
Something I noticed is that the instability of wicked men. You look at Nebuchadnezzar
Yeah.
and how he was like, all right, let's build an image. Let's just put it out there. Everyone has to bow down to it.
Yeah.
And he's like, these lads, and they're like, why aren't they bowing down? Okay, you have to bow down. And then get them all, and then brings them, okay, they have to be set on fire. And then they respond to him, and then he's like, okay, heat up the furnace. Like, he's just getting angry. And then all of a sudden, he sees this miracle take place, and he's like, praise God. Like, he's just all over the place.
Yeah.
This ungodly man that he just doesn't know where his mind is, he doesn't know what he's thinking. His thoughts aren't established.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to another. And as you read on, it's the same thing.
A man given to his flesh. Yeah, and in amongst it, you have these 4 men at different times that interject that come across as just completely calm and in control. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Daniel. Never rushed, never hurried, just steady and sure. Yeah, in opposition. Yep. Look at Genesis. I said we do past. Oh, yeah.
Many years ago, when there was some issues within the church, one of the members was not very happy, and that night threw her Bible into the potbelly stove and said, "That's it, I'm done." Woke up in the morning, guess what? Bible wasn't burnt.
Yeah.
It's like, what? that changed her thinking.
Yeah. Wow. There you go. Genesis chapter number 10, real quick, which is I said we'll go back and just do something a little past practical and prophetic. And if you've been in church any length of time, you probably know the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So we're going to not go into the details of it as much as just to give you some points here. One thing that as I read, and it says this in verse 3 of chapter 3, it says, and we're gathered together unto the dedication of the image, verse 4, then the herald cried aloud, to you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages. This is me reading Daniel 3:4. Go to Genesis. I'm about to read something. I'm just prepping you. Sorry if you can follow that. So it says that they gathered together in Daniel's account that the people, languages, and nations were all assembled there. It's like, and he's ruling over the vast majority of the nations of the world at that particular time, and they're assembled here at this image, or a representation of them. You know what I think of that? I think of another time in that same area where they all came together as one, which is the Tower of Babel, right? Which is a precursor to this. What is taking place in chapter number 3 has already happened in that geographical location 1,000 years before. When Nimrod rose up, and Nimrod, it says here in chapter number 10 in the genealogy of the nations, it says in verse number 8, and Cush, now there was Noah. Noah had Ham, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham had Cush. We had other sons, Cush, Mizraim, and Phut, and Canaan, but Cush was there. In verse number 8, and Cush begat Nimrod. He became a mighty one in the earth. Now it says of Nimrod in verse 9, he was a mighty hunter before the Lord, wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Arak, and Akkad. Now, Akkad is the old Akkadians in history. If you know anything about ancient history, the Akkadians become the Neo-Babylonians. So Nebuchadnezzar was an Akkadian. He is a descendant of Nimrod from there. So Nimrod here, Nimrod has this city. He builds Babel. Now, Babel is the precursor to Babylon. All right, that's where Babylon comes from, is from the city of Babel. In the land of Shinar, Babylon is still in the same location, right? So Nimrod is worth our attention, because it would seem in that early time after the flood, Nimrod is a mighty hunter. He rose up the ranks. But it says that he is a mighty hunter before man and before God, that he is not just a hunter of animals of that sort, that he is a hunter of men, that he goes after their souls, or he is one that rises up the ranks. He sets up a kingdom. He is the one that is either rises through his actions or by muscle, and by army or by act. He rises up in the ranks and becomes king over them and gets a kingdom. And in this kingdom of them being together, he builds a city and says, right, we're going to build a city. And in it, we're going to have this city, and we're going to build this tower. It's going to be the pinnacle image of our representation of us coming together. And he says he does it before the Lord. That would seem to indicate that Nimrod, the name, means rebel. He is a rebel, but he's also a tyrant. It says here that he is a mighty one in the earth in verse 8. That same word is what's referred in Genesis 6 verse 4, when before the flood, there were mighty men of renown. It's that same idea. And that idea, Nephilim, giants, means fella. It's like you get this idea of these tyrants. That's what the word means. And here is Nimrod being a tyrant again, a mighty one, rises in ranks, raises up a kingdom. He has a city, and he is mighty before God and man. And Nimrod is a precursor to what then takes place. He builds Babel, he builds a city, he builds a kingdom. He rallies all the people to come as one, at one place with one language at that particular stage, and Nimrod is the king. Well, you fast forward that, and there's much more we could say about Nimrod, but his name means rebel, and I found this interesting amongst reading about that. Nimrod's name signifies rebellion, and know this, that tyrants to men are rebels to God. It means a man who is acting as a tyrant, as a leader, he by nature is also in rebellion against God. Because if you are in submission to God, you're not a tyrant towards men. So tyrants towards men are always rebels before God. So here is Nebuchadnezzar, as you're saying, these wicked men that are tyrants amongst men. They're also rebels before God. And now Nebuchadnezzar does the same thing. He gathers the nations, the languages, the people together, and he sets up an image. Now this image is interesting as well, because how many of you think that this is a statue? Or at least in your mind you picture a statue? Because that's how I always pictured it. Again, as you said, the amazing things when you reread the Bible and you carefully reread it, it doesn't say a statue. It says an image. In fact, if you give the dimensions of it, it's 70 cubits. It's 60 cubits tall by 6 cubits wide. So it's only 10% the width of its height. That's a column. Like it's 27 meters high, basically, by 2.5 meters. So it's narrow and very high. It's a column is what it is. Now, could you graph that into an image or to a statue and a picture of himself maybe? But never in the passage does it say. It just says this is his image. What is it? We don't know. What we do know, it's of gold, and it's a representation of who Nebuchadnezzar is, and bowing down to that is ultimately bowing down to Nebuchadnezzar and his kingdom and his authority and his power and his rule and his way and his empire and his kingdom. That's what it's symbolic of. And so he sets up this image of gold, which fits right in with Daniel chapter 2, where he has that dream, and God says to him, "Thou art the head of gold. You're the chief of all these nations." And guess what? It went to his head, and he just thought, "How great am I?" Builds this column, this image, sets it up, and then they come to it. Now, the word that is very significant in this, that appears again and again, and I've highlighted, and you probably could highlight it as well to know the significance of chapter number 3, is 11 times the word worship is mentioned. That's central to what is taking place in chapter number 3. He is asking them to worship the image that has been set up, and in so doing, worship Nebuchadnezzar, which it represents. So the worship is the issue. Now that's where at this time there are certain Jews who are accused who don't bow down and worship. And they said, we're not going to worship the image, we're going to worship the Most High God. And so you have that laid out before you in the passage. In verse number 6, it's worth noting, just on a practical perspective, if we're looking at practical as we mentioned, that whoso falleth not down to worship, the same shall be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. This is forced worship under fear. You will worship or you will die. That's false worship. That's not what God requires. God is not looking for forced worship under the fear of death or by fear, based upon fear. And if we look at that and think, well, we shouldn't be forcing worship and making based upon fear, and that's wrong, right? But also with our kids, we must be gentle around these things, that we don't force worship based upon fear to our kids. We're not just like making them fear to serve God in being afraid or threatening them. But true worship of God, the true worship of God comes out of love and reverence. Get their heart and train their heart to love God. You love God and lead your children to love God, that they may worship with love and reverence, not forced worship upon fear, as Nebuchadnezzar was trying here. Quickly, with prophetic overlay of this, is the image. The image that is mentioned here, that there's a bowing down of an image, is replayed again in Revelation chapter number 13. If you go there, you don't have to go there right now, but that's what the Antichrist ultimately ends up doing. The beast that is mentioned in Revelation 13, excuse me, sets up an image. And that image is, they are to worship the image that he sets up. In Revelation chapter 13, verses 14 through 15, it says this, that the beast, and he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, not a statue or whatever, but they are to make an image to the beast. That's the image is made mention of again, which had the wound by a sword and did live, talking about the beast, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, and that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So the image in it has this ability to know whether they are worshipping or not worshipping. And that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Here is an image, here is worship, and here is under the fear of death. It's the same thing going to take place again. Under a world rule, people coming together, bow down to this image, bow down to this system, bow down to this kingdom, acknowledge this. There's religious and there's worship involved in this. It's the same things that happened in Nimrod in the time of Babylon. It's the same thing that happened in Nebuchadnezzar's day. It's the same thing that will happen again at the end of time. It's the same things repeat again and again, all the way through the Bible and all the way through history. And so this image is made mention of under fear of death, but there are those that will go through it. Now, there is a pictorial sense here. Let me just say this. What's the mark of the beast? 666. 603 score and 6. 6, 6, and 6. How tall is the image in Nebuchadnezzar's image? 66. It's 66. There's there are connections there. In the 6 is the number of man. There are connections between what he mentions about the image and the mark of the beast and bowing down and worshipping, and the connections there in Daniel chapter number 3 of the image is 63 score. It's 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide. It's 66 in that sense. And this other one is 603 score and 6 is the mark of the beast in Revelation 13:18. But in all of this, Nebuchadnezzar is a type of the beast, who is the Antichrist a world rule that will rise up like Nebuchadnezzar, like a Nimrod, that will rise up again. It's mentioned in Revelation that Nebuchadnezzar is the type. The image is the type and picture of the abomination of desolation that he set up, that he sets it up in the holy place. The fiery furnace is a picture of the great tribulation, and the 3 Hebrews are a type of the nation of Israel. And God will deliver them and destroy those who bound them. The same things of what takes place there, that God protects ultimately the nation of Israel through the great tribulation. He protects his people, and at the end of it, they are promoted above all the other nations. Again, God works through his people, and God has the same plans again. What you see in Daniel 3 takes place again in Revelation 13. So when we read the book of Daniel, it's not just a story, and particularly saying, oh, it's a Sunday school story, and you hear about these things, and but there's much more to it, prophetically speaking. What takes place here in the book of Daniel happens again, and again it overlays. If you understand what took place there, you'll realize these things are going to happen again sometime in the future. Another ruler who has the same attitude of that Babylonian of Babel, of Nimrod, that wants to be a world ruler, unify the people under their mighty hand and their tyrannical ways, and to say we have power and authority here, and let's leave off the God of heaven and let's worship, let's set up an image that represents what we're about and about us. There's going to be a ruler that rises up and does it all over again, and brings the nations together, and brings the languages together, and brings the people together, and says, right, let's be unified around this cause and about our own cause and our own city and our own ways. Forget about God. Let's worry about us. That's the system of Babylon. It's the mindset of Babylon, and every kingdom, it seems, ends up down the same way of Babylon. They all have a desire for power and for hunger and authority and the things of this world at the expense of leave God out of this. And that's how the system in the world, that's how this world rules. That's how Nebuchadnezzar was ruling. That's how Nimrod was ruling. And that's how the future one will rule, with that same idea. Unify the nations under us and all of this life and this world at the expense of leaving God out of it, and bow down to this image. And yet there will be those during that tribulation period, during that furnace time, that says, we will not bow down. And God will go through them. There's at least 144,000 that God seals and protects, and they go through. And there are 2 witnesses that God protects, and all these different people that are protected as well amongst the tyranny that shall yet come. And it's about worship, and it will be about worship when that time comes as well. That's why we said in our time that we have at the moment, vaccines. Why are vaccines not the mark of the beast? Because it has nothing to do with worship. Primarily, among other reasons, but primarily it's not about worship, the vaccines. The mark of the beast ultimately, and the image which is set up, is about worshipping the beast and worshipping the image and worshipping things that are contrary to God. All right, Daniel chapter 4. Read ahead. It sure does help if you've read ahead and at least got an idea and read through it once or twice, the story. Daniel, what's chapter 4 next week? That'll be